Alrighty, well, welcome again, and we'll get started with our panelists. We'll start with Angela first.
Hi everyone, I'm Angela. I'm a medical student at UCLA DGSOM right now, and I also did my undergrad at UCLA. My BS was in psychology, and you guys said a fun fact about me. My parents are both third generation bakers, so from Iran to Armenia to LA.
Um, Raphael, do you want to go next?
Hey everybody, I'm Raphael. I'm a finishing up my third year at Keck at USC. My undergrad I did at UC Irvine. I did my master's there as well, and I studied neurobiology. And fun fact about me, I don't think I've gone to a single lecture since maybe like the first week of medical school.
Okay. My name is Bobak. I'm a first year medical student at St. Louis University School of Medicine in St. Louis, Missouri. I went to UCLA for my undergrad and I graduated just this past summer in molecular, cellular, and developmental bio. And I'm from the Bay Area, San Jose, California. Fun fact, I've been learning anatomy this past semester, human anatomy, but like I also bought like a used car that had a lot of problems. So like I've also learned car anatomy and like learned to like fix cars like in concordance with like human anatomy. And it's like not that different, It's just kind of a cool thing. Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, I think the question is we want to know, Raphael, how do you manage not going to any lectures?
Yeah, one thing I would say about medical school, I think that it's going to become apparent that there's like a million ways to study. There's like a million different ways to study. There's no one way of having a successful study plan in a sense. I think it became very apparent to me in the very beginning that I cannot focus in lecture. I don't know what it is, but the moment I sit down in lecture, 10 minutes later, I'm gone. I'm like, my mind is somewhere else. I'm thinking about God knows what. I don't even know. So I realized that I study better on my own. And luckily, at USC, I mean, at many schools, I would say lectures are recorded. So and you can watch them at home, and they give you access to all sorts of things like that. Obviously, we would have like some mandatory things that would have week to week that we would always go to. We wouldn't skip out on those. But I realized that for me, I learn much better whenever I do my studying on my own by looking at my recorded content by myself. And then whenever I would go to school for like the activities that we would do, let's say like cases or problems that we would do with as groups, just come with questions from the studying I already did, and then just kind of fine tune whatever I learned on my own at that point. So for me, I found that lecture isn't helpful, but it's helpful whenever I can actually do that on my own and come with questions essentially. And I'd be happy to talk about any specifics too, but it might be too like specific about like med school stuff, or I can be general about studying stuff too.
Well, I was going to ask, oh, can you all hear me? All right. I was going to ask everybody, you mentioned different ways of studying. What is everyone's preferred way of studying?
I can go off of what Rafael said about studying. I You have to, I think, test everything out in the beginning just to see what what type of study person you are. So in the beginning, I went to a lot of the lectures. I realized that sometimes it would be not relevant to what the exams would be based on. So I, over time, just refined which lectures I would attend, and then eventually and got to the point where I was like just trying to study for board exams, so step one, and then I came to the realization that they are really not including a lot of the material that's on our boards in our lectures. So I decided to supplement that study time with a lot of boot camp videos, which I chose as my third party resource. And then doing that, there's only so much time we have. I was also doing Anki at the same time. So that led me to kind of shift a little bit, just over to doing everything outside of lectures. So I would again go on my own and study, do those videos, do my Anki, and then do practice questions, UWorld as well. So that was my study mechanism, I guess, during my first year.
Yeah, I guess I can share my perspective, even though I've only like been in med school since July. But I'm still like as Angela was saying, like you have to spend some time figuring out what works for you. I'm still kind of in that figuring out phase of like trying out exactly what works for me. I like started out trying to like take notes on recorded lectures. The way our school works, we have a bunch of recorded lectures and like a kind of reverse classroom kind of quizzing thing that we do is group activities with the whole class together. So like you have to prepare for those and study and then eventually study for the tests. So like I started out like writing notes. That took too long, didn't work. But like essentially like what works the best for me is just reviewing and testing myself with multiple passes of the content. Usually like 3 or 4 passes like on different days of like a specific content piece is good enough. And it's difficult to know everything because there's like so much. Like I just had an exam and it was like 1,800 slides of content on like that exam. Granted, it was like anatomy stuff. So that's like I know it changes after anatomy, but stuff like that. I also use Anki to study, but I fall behind because it's a lot. But hopefully I won't when it comes to studying for boards. Yeah.
I gotta say for Anki, there's this one tool where you can postpone your cards for like a day or so. Like when I'm going on vacation, I just don't want to worry too much. I'm just to not break my streak, I'll do like a few cards and then I'll click the postpone tool.
I think Anki's the great unifier in med school. It's the one thing that everybody hates but loves, and it works, but doesn't work. But you have to do it. It's one of those things. For those who don't know what Anki is, I didn't know what Anki was like until I don't know, maybe like a couple of years ago. But Anki's like this flashcard software. First time you open it, it looks like you're opening like some, I don't know, some aerospace technology from like the 1980s or something. It doesn't make any sense with all this like coding and all these weird options. But you find a good friend who knows how to use it. You sit with them and you make your Anki make sense. But it's basically this flashcard software where it has all these pre-made flashcards, or you can even make your own from that are specific to all the content that you're learning. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what med school you go to, you're more or less going to learn roughly the same things, plus or minus maybe a few details depending on what your professor is interested in. But the boards, we all take the same boards in the day, so we're all end of the day learning the same things. And Anki has like these massive decks with pre-made material that you basically are supposed to do every day, to the best of your ability. And that repetition basically drills in all these little facts and details that might be important for the tests. For me, I've always been a big picture person. I hated details. In fact, like growing up, I didn't like biology. Weirdly enough, I liked the thought of biology, the idea of biology. I thought it was very cool, but I didn't like taking biology class because, like, why do I have to memorize all these facts that I'm going to forget in a month? So I actually like chemistry a lot more because I was like, okay, like we get to like kind of logic things out, and it clicked a lot more with me. So I've always been a big picture person in terms of I like concepts. It just makes sense to me. I'm not a memorizer, but Anki is like that thing that whether you like it or not, you will remember everything. Like you will just be like a fact machine after using Anki for a few months. It is undeniably very helpful, especially like the first 2 years of med school. I think after like year two, once you finish your boards, it becomes kind of like a thing that if you can keep doing, great. If you don't, it's not the end of the world. Like at this point, I don't really use it anymore, but I think in the first 2 years, it's extremely helpful.
Thank you for all your answers. So this one's a little bit more of a fun question. What is your favorite part of medical so far, and what has been the most challenging?
I don't know what it's like at your guys' schools, but at my school, it's like a condensed curriculum. So we have it. What's typical is preclinicals are 2 years at most schools. UCLA does it in 1 year. So for me, it was just keeping up with everything and being able to finish enough content to be ready for clerkships in our second year, which we just started. So I think that I had gotten advice from upperclassmen to just start right when we start school. Usually we have like a month off and we're just getting used to like the curriculum. But I immediately started watching boot camp videos and started doing Anki on the topics that were not going to be covered in our school's curriculum because they did have to cut a few subjects out like biochem. And that's going to be on the boards. So just doing keeping it up throughout the year, I think, served me well when just started my rotations. But like, I feel like I'm able to, although I didn't end up taking step one, we had 2 weeks off. We don't even get a dedicated before we start our clerkships. We, me keeping up that Anki, and I also reviewed some like PDFs of, like pharmacology and all that. That serves you well when you start going on rotations because you're able to apply that and you kind of get to study and just revive that memory over and over again. That helps. It's like an Anki in real life.
I would say for me, the hardest part and the best part both are the same thing. It's definitely rotations. It's definitely rotation. I think first for the first for us it's a year and a half, the preclinical year. And for those who don't know, preclinical year is like basically just like standard classroom stuff, mostly similar-ish to like what you do in undergrad, and then clinicals is whenever you go and you do the work. Like in the hospital, you do rotations. Each school has like different amount of weeks. At USC, we do 6 week rotations in every department pretty much. The rotations, it is, I mean, you're going in there, you are working and you are doing the job pretty much and learning on the job as well. It is unbelievably fun. It is also unbelievably hard sometimes, but it's the best part. It is really, really fun. Now, why is it hard? It's hard because everything you learn in the first year and a half or year, it feels like it's just thrown out the window. It's gone. Like you walk in, you feel like an idiot, for lack of better words. First day, I remember on my pediatrics rotation, like, oh, pediatrics, like this is gonna be like, yeah, this should be like everyone's like, oh, this is one of the more chill ones. I'm like, okay. I go in and we had we work at LA General for most of our rotations, but we had some director of GME and he's like a 80-year-old old school, very classical pediatrician, internal medicine guy. He likes to thoroughly break down every blood work, every possibility, every differential to teach, and it was wonderful. But I remember the first time I sat down, the first word that came out of my mouth about this guy's blood work was like his sodium was normal. And he just like stop right there. And then it became a 10-20 minute grilling session about what that even means. What do you mean by normal? What does abnormal mean to you? Can it be abnormally normal? Can it be normally abnormal? And then just like every possibility, every way you can grill a human being, I got grilled. And it was great. It was wonderful. It was hard because it's like you have to sit there and you have to you realize how little you know after the whole you finish your boards like, yeah, on top of the world. Like I just did step. I know what I'm doing. The first day you walk into actual clinicals, you're like, wow, back to the bottom of the totem pole. I do not know anything actually. So it's a very humbling experience over and over and over. And you work very hard. But it is the most rewarding, it is the most fun. It's where you learn the absolute most. For me as well, like again, like I said before, I was never a lecture person, but when you're working on the job, the amount you learn and the amount that sticks in your brain is unbelievable. It's very crazy how that happens. We recently did our trauma surgery rotation, and the hours were brutal. We would do 30-hour shifts, and at LA General, they have a very, very high volume trauma, and the teams aren't that big. So the med students would do a lot. Like they would actually have us do quite a lot, and even by ourselves sometimes. But the hours would get brutal. Like on by hour 30, you're like seeing things, and then you have to drive home after, which I don't recommend, by the way. You should go sleep first. But the rotations, in my opinion, are both the hardest and the most fun that you'll ever have in medical school.
Yeah, traveling back in time to first year. So like I like our curriculum is like 1.5 years, not as accelerated as UCLA's 1 year. But I'd say the hardest part is definitely getting adjusted to the pace and sheer amount of stuff you're expected to know. It is truly nothing compared to like whatever anyone probably learned in undergrad, regardless of what the undergrad was. It is just so much stuff you need to know and to like such a degree of specificity that it's just like super challenging in that regard. And it takes some time to adjust, but most everyone usually adjusts. It's just very difficult at the start and like you kind of just have to be prepared for that. Another like difficult thing for me personally, it's like our school does like full anatomy dissections and tests on like those specific things on the actual cadavers that we did dissect on. And that was like something very novel to me and different, a little jarring at first, but also extremely difficult, especially we just finished our head and neck anatomy unit and everything looks kind of the same. So it's super difficult in that regard too. It's just something we've prepared for, but I'm sure everyone will do great when it comes to that. I'd say the most fun part though is probably the community element of medical school. I've heard that it like kind of falls off a bit once you go through rotations, that everyone goes their separate paths. But at the beginning, like everyone's struggling and going through this together, and like you really form a good sense of like I don't know, I guess trauma bonding is the right word, but like that sense of community is really nice. And it's something I'm happy to have. And I have great friends. So I'd say that's something I love about med school.
One thing to note too for everybody, in my opinion, maybe it's a crazy thing to say, but I still think the one of the hardest parts of medical school is just the beginning. The very beginning. It's one of the hardest parts. Once you get through that, you figure it out. You kind of get into the flow of things. Everything starts to click, things make sense. But that beginning part when you're trying to figure out like how do you even study, like who do you hang out with, all of that stuff, it feels like you're starting like high school all over again. But the figuring out how to study is the hardest part. But once you find what clicks for you, the rest is just going to be rinse and repeat essentially. So that adjustment period is a very difficult part. For me, it was the hardest part, to be honest. I think it was even harder than adjusting to rotations, the very beginning. But that first few months, you go through it, and then it gets much better.
Alrighty. Just someone asked if possible, could people like change their name to add their medical school next to their name if possible? Just, UCLA, USC, and SLU. And then for the next question though, so someone asks about the resources for someone who might be struggling or might have, ADHD. If you guys are aware of any resources or that your medical school offers or anything you've found helpful.
I can talk on that. I think in our med school, they really kept pushing like resources for students in terms of adding time to exams. Like I remember when I would walk out of exams, like there would be a whole floor that was reserved for students that had like ADHD, I think, and like other issues that they had communicated to the counselor. So they're very open about it and they encourage us to have meetings, even if we maybe don't have anything going on, but they just, to prepare us in case something does come up in the future and we want someone to talk to. I think UCLA does a good job about that.
Yeah, same at USC, I would say that there's a lot of resources that they offer right off the bat, accommodations for exams, for times, for assignments, for due dates. One piece of advice, like to be honest, I cannot give advice for how difficult it would be in balancing. I saw one of the questions was like two kids under two with ADHD. I'm assuming you're referring to that one. I can't imagine how that would be. That would be very difficult for sure. That is undeniably going to be a strain on the schedule. Now I can't imagine how that would be, but one piece of advice that I've gotten as a general piece of advice, which may or may not be applicable, so take with grain of salt, is combine roles when possible. So for me, that meant like whenever I would be walking or going on a workout, I would be listening to a lecture. Like when I was living on my own, it's like when you're doing the dishes, I'd have like a lecture on the side. Just combining things wherever I can to the best of my ability, just to kind of knock two birds out with one stone in a sense. It's difficult, and your focus is constantly going to be, taking away, but just be flexible with your schedule and And yeah, it roll with the punches essentially. It's difficult. It's undeniably difficult.
I love what you said, Rafael. Actually, there was a point where I realized I'm just sitting and studying way too long. I need to get up and walk. So I figured out how to set Anki up on my iPad, and I just went to the gym and I would put on the treadmill and for like an hour and a half straight, just finished my Anki. That
Oh
would
yeah.
be helpful.
Yep, combine roles. Combine roles as much as you can. Combine roles. You can't sit in one room for 9 hours. And especially if you have two kids, that's just going to be physically impossible. There's no way that your kids are going to allow you, like, not distract you for that long. So, yeah, it's going to be hard, but you can do it.
Yeah, parroting that. That's fantastic advice to kind of combine and try to like do as much as you can with the time that you do have in things that can be combined. Again, also like Anki at the gym is also something I've tried. It is very effective. You get a lot done. Like, what am I doing during rest periods between sets anyway, right? Just scrolling on my phone on Instagram. Might as well like get like 20 cards in or something. So something like that. I will say my school, like they really once you're in, I don't know if this is a trend for a lot of med schools, but like it feels like once you're in med school, they really care about your success. Like they want you to succeed and graduate and do well. They'll provide like a lot of like counseling resources, a lot of like like there's just a ton of resources they offer to help you succeed in different facets. Um, maybe it could apply to that specific situation too. I personally haven't used like every resource, so I don't know exactly like what is the most effective, what is not. But like medical schools have a lot of resources usually to help you succeed and graduate, hopefully, and do well. So hopefully they can help that situation too. Again, I'm not 100% sure. And I've also been in med school for like 3 months. So yeah.
Thank you guys. So for the next question, going back to your process of applying to med school, how did you guys write your personal statements? What was that process like, if you remember?
That's a good question. And also, I encourage everybody to ask as many application questions as possible. Just, we can talk a lot about what med school's like, but obviously, I know what's on everybody's minds is how do we get there. So please ask away about the whole process. So personal statement. Look, honestly, so I'm on the so I guess a little side note. I'm on the admissions committee at Keck. So we look at applications all the time. We interview. One thing I've realized over the years is the only good piece of advice, and I used to give different pieces of advice, but the only good pieces of advice is whatever you do, just tell your story. That's it. Tell your story, and there's like certain points you want to hit, certain qualities you want to portray. You want to portray like honesty, integrity, care, commitment to service. Like there's like we can get very detailed about like there's certain points one hit. I think the Dr. Gray or whatever his name is. I think he has a really good book about personal statement writing. I didn't use it at all, but a lot of my classmates did, and they said that it was very helpful to them. So something to potentially check out. I don't know if Bobak or Angela, if you guys took a look at that book and can give any tips on it. But as far as personal statement goes, I can't tell you how strong or weak my personal statement was, but I can tell you that I just told what my story was and my process of getting to medical school. Like it wasn't a sob story for me. It was just like a story about why I'm passionate, how that manifested in my life. Um, a little bit touching on like experiences I've had, and it's literally a story. I told the story from my first person point of view, essentially. Um, you guys will see that there's a million ways to write personal statements too, unfortunately. Some people use it like a resume, which I don't really recommend. Some people tell a story about a patient interaction. Some people tell a few stories about family experiences or growing up. There's no one right way of doing it. Just the important thing is just get your story across.
Yeah. Um, I do agree in that sense. Like it just has to be like kind of a big whole story of you telling your whole journey from, I guess, whatever point you want to the end. You don't want to just list like things that you did, like you want to kind of make it, if possible, like I know people say like, oh, write a narrative about like how all your events tie together. That's like the like ideal scenario. And like no one's gonna have perfect extracurriculars and jobs and roles that are gonna line up to make a perfect story. Like maybe some people do. Those people might have been preparing for medical school from like middle school, you know? Like some people, I've met people like that. They have like they've had all their events lined up since then. You know, some of their parents helped them. They made like a perfect plan. Oh wow, you sound like the most perfect medical school candidate. Like looking at your story, you've been preparing for a long time. I like wasn't entirely sure until like a little bit towards like my first or second year in college, right? So I didn't have all these events lined up, all these experiences, like research, volunteering, clinical things, all from before. So I just told my story as it was. Some of the parts might have felt like, you know, oh, this event here, this event here, but it all reflected me and my specific experience and what did this mean to you? I think that's kind of the big picture of what you want to really display because everyone volunteers, everyone has like touching patient stories, right? Everyone has like research experiences, but why is that personal to you? And why does that make you good candidate to be a doctor? That's like what you want to hit. You don't want to just say things, you want to tell the story from those like events. That's how I would describe it. That's what I tried to do. I'm a terrible writer for context, so like it was difficult for me, but like ask people to read your stuff and like ask other people those questions that I just asked and tell them if they see that. Because you're more biased towards your writing. You're going to say, oh, this is okay. But other people will call you out. That's just my little tidbit of advice.
Um, I'm just gonna echo what everyone said already, and then just I'm thinking about how it was when I started, and I didn't know where to start at all. So what I did was I just had my notes app open, and I remember just jotting down lines of just things that have happened in my life. So having like a story bank going is really helpful. I remember I would write like a line or two, and then I'd say, okay, maybe this idea is better. So just adding things into this, like my notes app that I was later on able to just put into like a Word doc or a Google Doc and just start editing, expanding on it. I think you guys touched on some major points of like family experiences were helpful for me. I wanted to also incorporate a few patient experiences into my personal statement. I also added like not too much about research because you also get a works and activities section on the application. But I did like kind of want to talk about why I pursued a little bit of research. So just adding like little bits and pieces of why you did things so that then when the I guess reviewer can look at your works and activities and get a bigger, like a full picture of what these activities were, like a more concrete description. That's the point of the personal statement to give you like an overlay. And then when you go into the specifics, that's the works and activities. Um, it is a story. Definitely, you want to not make it super fluffed up in the beginning. You don't want to, make it too extra, but um, make it captivating from the start. You want to have like a hook, like a reason at the start, because realistically, when someone's starting to read your application, they want to catch on and want to continue reading it. And then at the end, I think just from beginning to end, maintaining a theme, having a theme present, is very important. So if you're uh, it could be like a metaphor that you really like. You can kind of expand on that and then compare that to each of your little stories. So your patient experiences, your family, like what's consistent throughout. They could be completely different experiences. Mine were extremely different from one another. From family, I talked about my cousin who had like some genetic disorder, and then I touched on my research, which was completely different. But you have to figure out ways that you can connect the dots, and then if you're able to do that effectively, that will lead to a very strong personal statement.
Thank you. All right, so someone asked, So looking back, is there something you wish you would have known or done anything differently prior to starting med school?
I'm very passionate about this
Mhm.
one. I can go ahead and start. Everyone I asked before med school told me, "Oh, don't worry about it. You'll learn everything in med school. Like you have time. It's gonna, hit you like what's that fire hydrant thing where it's drinking from a fire hydrant. But you'll be fine." And so I wish, I mean, at least going into UCLA where everything is like accelerated, I just wish that I had started a little bit earlier in terms of like maybe buying boot camp and watching videos for fun. I think as pre-meds, like we're so used to just the fast pace of things. And so, going through undergrad, going through the MCAT, we, I mean, it was nice to take vacation and like have a year off, but every once in a while I'd get bored and I was like, okay, I really want to do something. Like I'm just curious. So if you guys are like me, I say you can go watch some dirty medicine videos on YouTube just to get a little preview of what's going on in med school. He's really like, he breaks it down simple. And then if you want to watch some sketchy videos, they're really fun. You could do some Anki with that if you figure it out. Again, no rush. You could just watch the videos as is. But that's what I wish I had done. That was, I think, like very chill, but to fill your time.
I think for wish what I would have done differently. Honestly, not I wouldn't say that anything significant. Maybe like in the pre-application phase, like in the pre-med phase in a sense, do some more community involvement work. I did a little bit, but there was definitely room for more. And I think medical schools in general really love to see community involvement, depending on the school, and and also it's a valuable experience for you. And hopefully you'll learn something interesting, and hopefully that can be incorporated on your essays and stuff too. But even outside of that, just it's working in the communities where you would potentially want to go to medical school. It's going to be a valuable experience because the moment you hit rotations, you are going to be working directly in that community. So showing a little bit of that beforehand, can hurt for sure. Yeah, I wouldn't say any significant changes though.
Um, like as to like what I would have wish I would have done differently before med school. Again, I've only been in med school for 3 months. I wish I'd known my study techniques then, I guess. Would have made it easier the first couple months. But I mean, like, that's obviously in hindsight. Have to actually struggle to figure them out. I would say like in terms of pre-med though, I wish I'd known a lot of things. Again, like it feels like you're preparing for this thing from like this whole application process from the moment you decide you want to do medicine. And you have to figure out like, oh, how do I implement all these elements that people talk about, right? The volunteering, the clinical service, the like research, if you want to do research for your application. Like all of that's super difficult if you've never done it before or like didn't have parents who did it or didn't have siblings. I mean, like you need to like ask mentors, find great mentors to help you and actually guide you towards that. Like because I initially like didn't really have many mentors or an idea of like how to do anything. I'd like look for anything clinical related, not knowing if it's actually a good clinical experience or not. I'd look for any research lab. Like I did a lot of research and like for quite a long time, like heavy duty, like wet lab research. There weren't any publications that came out of it. Like med schools, like I know it sounds like kind of grim, but like they really like publications. Like you guys can like research experience is fantastic and everything, but like if your lab publishes for the effort you do, that's definitely better than just no publications. So like just that's like a grim reality. If you can try to get into a lab that publishes. I wish I'd known that before I put a lot of time. Um, what else? Just like I wish I'd got into contact with upperclassmen and mentors earlier, I would say, to like have an idea of how to do stuff, what to do, and what other people have done, rather than kind of like trial and erroring my way until I kind of like the gears kind of got going, had a rhythm going, if that makes sense. But yeah, I guess the figuring out phase of everything. But yeah.
One thing to note from at least from the admissions committee side at USC, it might be a little bit different, but So one thing about publications that I just want to note down. So there is this conception that med schools, yes, they do like publications, but from the admissions committee standpoint, the amount of applicants who apply with publications is a very small percentage relative to applicants who don't have publications. And then in our school specifically, I would say the majority of people in our school do not have publications, but they did participate in some sort of research that they were able to have an intellectual conversation about during interviews. One thing that I recommend, if you do find yourself in a lab that didn't publish a lot or anything like that, it's not in the world. See if there's any opportunities in your school to participate in any of those those presentation things. Every school has like a different name for it. At UCI, they call it Europe, where it's like you do like this little thesis that you kind of prepare throughout the year. You do three semesters or 3 quarters of concurrent research. And then at the end, you write like a mini paper. You write an abstract, and abstracts are great too, by the way. And then you go and you present that like in front of a committee. And there's a lot, almost every school has a program about that. UCLA definitely has it. UC Irvine has it. I know UC San Diego has it. I know plenty. I know USC has it for sure. Um, there's a lot of schools that do have that. So consider doing something like that and talking to your research mentor about that. And that not only does count as a publication from our perspective, but it's a presentation as well, and it's showing that you are committed to participating in research. And I think it's a wonderful thing to get into. So don't stress too much about like, oh, I need to get a publication. End of the day, be assured, most people in med school don't have one. But if you do have one, that's like, wow, like icing on the cake. That's a cherry on top. Like, wow, like that's really great. Try doing one of those programs if you feel like that's something you can accommodate. That's a really great thing to include.
I
Yeah, a lot of schools and conferences have poster sessions, and that could be included as one. But getting published certainly is like a really high bar. I know people that spend, a year or two and don't get anything out, but also it also depends if your PI wants you to be published, and that's like a really high bar. So if you have, but if you're putting in 2 hours a week, don't expect a publication. People that get published putting in 40, 50 hours a week and doing something. So
Yeah.
it's not that,
I was gonna add actually to that. I was in a wet lab for a while and I never got published. And so I, by chance, I mean, the skills I learned from that wet lab, I was able to apply to a translational and clinical research lab where they also were doing immunohistochemistry. That is where I got published. So those skills actually will translate. And if you put that on your resume or you put it on your LinkedIn, like someone might reach out to you or you can reach out to them. That I think focusing on those labs, the translational and clinical research labs, really do get publications a lot faster. Um, and then side note is that that second mentor, I mean, he was able to publish me, but I think that just I wouldn't drop the second lab, the wet lab, if it's a slower lab like mine was. I decided to keep it on the side. And then in my gap year, I was working there and just doing it because it was associated with UCLA and I didn't want to just cut it off. I think that when you're applying to med school, longevity is also very important so that you show that you've been there from the beginning, even to the end. There were a few times where I was told you should just drop it, but I'm glad I didn't because my mentor ended up being the person that like knew so many people on my interview days. So it just goes to show like you should really maintain connections and if you've been there for a while, you can yeah, just keep it up if it's possible.
one thing I could tell you is that people in medicine know each other and they don't have to be at the same institution. So if you flaked or done something negative, everybody will know. And if you've done something positive, they will also know. They'll go out of their way to help you. But if you know, uh, but bad things get around faster, it seems.
Alrighty, so for the next question. So someone asks, any t advice or tips for students who are returning to school after years and don't remember anything either from, so uh, college or from high school to college. Also, if you have advice for your college.
Clarification. Is this returning like advice for college or advice for like the med school process, like MCAT and things like that?
It doesn't specify, so either one you would like to talk about or have experience with.
Okay. I would say I can speak for MCAT. It's hard for me to give more advice on the college front because after high school went to college and then it was kind of like I went continuously, so maybe Bobak, Angela have better tips. But as far as like studying for like specific medical related stuff, I would say that all you would need is just a little more time. You know, there's plenty more to play. There's also plenty of courses. There's plenty of like external resources and things like that that are geared specifically to towards like let's say if you haven't been exposed to this material before, or if it's been years since you've been exposed to this material. I think those tend to be very helpful, especially when studying for things like the MCAT. There's things such as like Princeton Review, Kaplan, all these materials that we can go detailed on, but they also come with options of like actual specific structured courses that come with all sorts of videos that are very simple to understand and practice problems and questions. And the main thing would be that just give yourself more time to kind of like re-immerse yourself in like the that same environment, if it's been a while. But I think once that adjustment phase is over, which is usually the first month or two, things get much easier and you kind of go back into the flow of things.
Um, I don't really have any personal experience in this regard. I went straight from high school to college and even college to med school. But I know our like talking at each level, our med school actually provides an additional like summer resource before med school starts as like a preview and like a ramp up to like getting back into school and studying again to like kind of like get you warmed up and going if you haven't been in school for a while, maybe you took like a few gap years or coming from like a I guess, non-traditional path, like to kind of prepare you and help you be on par and on track. But again, with what Raphael said, right? It's just all time, right? You just need to put a little bit more time. Let's say going back into preparing for like the MCAT or going to back to start college. I would say the best thing to look at to approach would be to start small and like one thing at a time rather than looking at it like a big picture, like, oh, I got to study everything on the MCAT. Oh, I got to study for all these classes. If you start small and use all these online resources like the Kaplan books or just like anything that kind of like learn how to study that works for you and start small. I would say that that's the best way to go. And once you master like that small like activity or challenge or course content that you learn, you can continue adding and building and that's I feel like that might be an effective possible way to get back into it. Looking at it as like a big, like taking 5 courses or like studying the entire MCAT, like, and looking at all the content looks jarring, but like I feel like just taking it a bit at a time might be a good way to ramp up and get back into the flow. That's the advice I can give. Again, it's not from personal experience though.
Again, I also don't have that personal experience. Went from high school to college, and then took a gap year to get to UCLA. But I know that there are a lot of classmates that have been out of school for a long time. Some of them had to take post-bac classes to renew their credits. So there's UCLA Extension. I think some students have done it there. But in general, I think that I don't know if you've worked in healthcare, maybe that's what pushed you to apply to medicine, but I think that in for everyone's case, we're all kind of jumping into it. All of us didn't know what to expect when we entered med school. So if you're talking about the pre-medical, application standpoint, studying for the MCAT, I think would be helpful to have the biochemistries, organic chemistries, or just renewed and reviewed. But if you're thinking of like med school, I think a lot of us are going to be in the same position as you in terms of just we don't really know what to expect. You get to med school, then you realize. But yeah, I would take post-bac classes if you need to renew credits and do volunteer work if you can. I know it's harder to be in touch with like research if you ha don't have any, if you're not affiliated with an institution. So um, maybe if you do have like a bachelor's or a degree, you can use that when you're reaching out to mentors and see if they can offer you guidance as well.
Thank you. Also, now a lot of some of you guys talked about this a little bit, but could you expand on your experiences either taking a gap year or not taking gap years? Would you recommend it? Anything you would do differently, though you kind of already talked about that. So yeah, just stuff like that. What is your experience with gap years?
Yeah. So gap years. I think gap years are becoming like a very normal part of med school. Like the application process, the average age of each school varies, but I think in ours was like 24 or 25 or something like that. So I mean, average age people graduate from college is like 22, 23. So that means most people are at least taking 1 or 2 gap years, uh, on average. That being said, there's plenty of people too who are going straight through. You know, they usually these people knew very beginning, very early on, they wanted to do medicine. So the moment they started college, they already had like kind of like a plan in place. For me, my plan didn't start until I was in my third year of school. When I went first 2 years, I went to a community college, and then I went to UC Irvine. So really, when I went to UC Irvine, starting my third year, what is that, your junior year? That's when my journey started in a sense. I did technically take a gap year. In that gap year, I did my master's degree, which wasn't on my application, but it was one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. So that being said, I know I saw somewhere in there, should you do a master's degree or something like that? No, like I don't think you need to. I really don't think. I think most people don't think you need to do that. I didn't do it for medical school. I did it because I like research a lot. So I did a kind of a master's degree that that helped me build some more skills in that category. Sorry, but it was not on my application because I it was after I had already applied. So gap years. Should you take one? Well, it depends completely at where you are in the application. So if you feel like you have strong clinical experience, you have some research experience, you've, spent a good amount of time volunteering in your community, you took the MCAT already and you kicked ass on it. You have people who can write your letters. You have like those standard kind of foundational things of your application that are ready. Then no, you definitely don't need to take a gap year, unless like life has different plans for you and you kind of are forced into it for other reasons. But if, as far as let's say everything else goes well and you have those things already, no, apply in your third year while you're a junior. So then by the time you graduate, you just matriculate into medical school. But let's say if you were like me and I did not have anything close to that ready by my third year, I had not studied for the MCAT. I barely started getting clinical experience. Well, actually, I had no clinical experience. I barely started getting research experience, and I did some volunteering in my community. A gap year became something that was essentially necessary for me. So I ended up applying when I was in my senior year of college. I got lucky that in that 2 years, my junior year and senior year, it was kind of like an explosion of things that happened, and things changed very rapidly. Once one door opens, um, so much just, so many things can happen so quickly. So in my senior year, I felt more comfortable that I felt like I was ready to apply. But naturally, if you're applying in your senior year, it takes a whole year for the whole application process, right? So I had a year outside of college essentially that was my gap year in a sense. Plenty of people, let's say they'll take 1 year after college and then they'll apply. So that's technically 2 gap years, the way that however you look at it. I think that my advice is genuinely it depends at where you're at in your application. Long story short.
Yeah, I agree. I took one gap year as well. I applied my senior year. For me, it was research. I really wanted to get like a few publications and then also um, just getting the application together. I think it was nice to spend that year where you're actually interviewing. I was able to prepare, write all of my essays. For me, it was helpful to have like a gap year.
Yeah. So, I did not end up taking a gap year. Kind of what like led to that decision. I'm kind of I honestly don't know what led to that decision. I'm a very kind of impatient-ish person, and I was like, oh, I want to just go into med school and like start. I don't want to like stop for a minute. I just want to do this. And I kind of realized this like towards the end of my first year, and I like that's when I really tried to ramp up trying to get everything in, if that makes sense. Like get all those activities and research and volunteering in. And to be honest, it felt like everything became almost a little bit rushed in a way where I was like rushing to get like letters and like trying to jam in studying for my MCAT. And like, to be honest, that was a stressful period. It was a very stressful period because you're doing all this stuff at the same time and trying to like multitask while also managing your undergrad degree and trying to get good grades on top of that. And it's just like I would say it was very stressful for me. And I'd say it probably led me to have like my application might have been better if I like took a gap year and kind of spread out the time a little bit more and had the chance to do like more activities, maybe get better letters, things like that. Um, and it would be like less of a stress because I'm writing my app while also in my third year, which I'm like still taking difficult classes, and it's not like my fourth year, which was way easier because I had like nothing left to do in terms of classes basically. But yeah, managing the MCAT and all these activities all at the same time with that was tough and stressful. Would I do it differently though? Like I'm pretty happy with my current situation. I was very fortunate. I did end up getting in on my cycle. The cycle was stressful to say. It wasn't chill at all, but I'd say it's definitely a path that's an option. It's not going to be easy, I'd say, unless like you knew from like maybe high school that you wanted to go into medicine and like you had everything lined up section by section. Maybe like I know some people graduate early, a year early, and then like just like put that time into studying, stuff like that. That's not what I did. But yeah, it's another path. And I would go towards recommending people to take a gap year, which kind of sounds silly since I didn't, but like it was stressful, I would say. Yeah.
Alrighty, so kind of on a similar note, could you guys talk about your extracurriculars you had, and then also when did you study slash take the MCAT?
Yeah, great question. So extracurriculars, off the top of my head, I a big part of my application was my research. I was always passionate about science growing up. I was actually studying engineering before medicine, so I liked science a lot. So that kind of was my entry into medicine in a sense. Um, I would say from extracurriculars, so I did a lot of clinical research. I spent a couple of years doing clinical research. I had a clinical experience as in the form of a medical assistant. I was doing medical assistant work essentially. All this was at UCI. I did volunteering, multiple things for volunteering. Things like so I am Armenian, so I did a couple of organizations, working with a couple of Armenian organizations, volunteering with Armenians and Armenian students and tutoring and things like that, but also working with struggling students at multiple schools and just kind of and tutoring. That's one of the volunteering experiences that I did. I also volunteered at a local hospital to where I live. I did that for maybe like a year or two, very on and off, maybe like 4 hours every other week for a couple of years in my first 2 years of school. While I was trying to figure out if I really wanted to do this, it was a very low time commitment, but that's one of the things I did. I started a podcast at that time. It was for pre-med students specifically. And I think that was an experience that me and my friends kind of did mostly just to document our journey. It was kind of like a personal thing that we did, but it ended up being something that at the time it got kind of popular. It was so that was a fun kind of thing to do. And we had a good time, and now we basically documented our med school journey on that. We aren't doing any recordings anymore now that we're in med school. I feel like things got so busy that we kind of stopped having time and we're all in three different places. But that was kind of like a little fun extracurricular that I did. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head if there's anything really else, but really it comes down to it was like community service, volunteering in a hospital, clinical experience, clinical research, and yeah, I mean that was kind of that was it. Pretty standard to be honest.
I can jump on this question. So, um, I agree with Rafael. A lot of it has to do with community service. Like you have main buckets. I look at it that way. You have to think about your buckets. You got your research on one end, you got your community service here, and then what makes you unique as well. Don't forget that because that also matters. For me, so my research, like I was in two different labs. And then for community service, I'm also Armenian, so I was involved with Armenian Students Association at UCLA, and I showed like I kind of started off my freshman year to the senior year. And then I was also involved with advocacy as well. They like that too. I created an organization for my cousin's disorder, and so I kind of advocated like more national scale for that. And then I think when it comes to the application, you um, you don't want to sound like a robot, like a pre-med that checks off every, mark. And I'm not gonna lie, like during my gap year, yeah, I did work as a scribe, and then I also worked in undergrad as a scribe, but I also worked in my parents' family bakery. Like on the holidays, I was working, on during the weeks, I was working. So I talked about that, how that showed me just like dedication to the community too. So you can incorporate jobs as in a form of community service. Don't think like any job is dismissive. You can actually tweak it so that you can show you've learned a certain skill that you can apply to your future role as a physician as well. So there's many ways you can kind of intertwine that. I learned from, my work working within the Armenian community for, just I'm gonna say patients, customers are coming in with like EBT, and so there was like food, they're having difficulty with food, and then being able to deal with that in patients every day it's like a similar like it's a line that you can bring into medicine when you're talking about it in your applications. um, so I think that makes you unique actually, and that's what a lot of interviewers touched on in my throughout all the med school interviews that I had. And then let's see, I'm thinking about anything else that I did. I think that it's important. Shadowing is important to a degree. Um, you can mention that, but I think more important is if you include clinical experiences. So Raphael said medical assistant, you could do scribing. Those are like considered active jobs where you're actively doing something. So making sure you touch on that in your applications. You can say you started off shadowing them and then they like, they took you on as a medical assistant or scribe. Um, and then, I volunteered as well at hospitals. So unfortunately, I do need to head out right now as well. But if there's any questions, you guys can feel free to send it my way too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angela.
Yeah. So kind of adding on to like my perspective on that. I also did like try to fill the buckets, and a lot of the stuff I did was in a way like again I mentioned like if it was a little rushed, like some of the stuff I tried to merge my clinical and service experiences to both be doing something clinical and like giving back to the community at the same time. I was with the Carrick Centers program at UCLA's hospital. Oh, also, I didn't have a car. Like my mode of transportation was bus, like mooching off rides from people and like walking with my two legs from like the Westwood area, which was very difficult. That's something I want to know. Like having a car makes life easier, I think. So that was just a difficulty I had. Um, I did research at a oral bacteria lab at UCLA School of Dentistry, but like it was very tied to like colorectal cancer, so I found it like interesting there. That was like the medical tie, I guess. Spent a lot of time with them. Again, I was a hospital volunteer and I ended up actually being one of the leaders of the program, like responsible for interviewing new volunteers, training volunteers, stuff like that. So like a little bit of a leadership element to it. All around LA's community, I helped host kidney disease health screenings for free. Like we worked with nephrologists and we like would do clinical, how do you describe it? Clinical screenings basically of like anyone who wanted to screen like to be health screened at like libraries or track and field meets, sports events, stuff like that. That was pretty cool. That was like again like something kind of clinically related, but also service oriented to help the community. I was the president of the Iranian Medical Society because I was Iranian and there's a lot of Iranian pre-meds at UCLA. So that was another leadership thing. And again, that was kind of like just something to support underclassmen pre-meds and like socialize, have fun dinners, stuff like that. I wrote a little notepad of stuff I did to just to jog my memory. I hosted free tennis clinics. I love playing tennis. Hosted like little tennis clinics with rackets and materials for people in my community. This was back home though in San Jose during the summers. And I made this volunteer tutoring organization in high school, and I just kept contributing to that and training new tutors. And it's like for middle and elementary school students, like little tutoring thing. So online for free towards directly towards people who like might need the resources more. So that's just another little volunteer thing I did. And kind of tying that into my MCAT study, I studied for the MCAT since I had to take it a little bit earlier. I started studying the summer of my, what was it? Second year after my second year summer. Yeah, that's when I started studying. I took it that September. I wasn't like it was a good score, but I wasn't the biggest fan of my score. And my mom wanted me to take the MCAT again. So I was like, okay, mom, I'll study more. And I studied throughout like not as much in the fall, but like more in the spring. Then I took it again and I got a better score and I just applied with that. And that was kind of very stressful to do on top of like every difficult third year class I was taking. All my extracurriculars lined up at that time too and studying. I didn't really go out at all. Didn't really talk to people. I just ate dinner. That was my socialization and going to class, which really sucked. But yeah, that's my personal pre-med experience. But yeah, those are all the activities and things I did.
Yeah, two of my roommates actually at UCLA were Iranian medical school students, so or pre-med students. So
Maybe I
um
know them.
Aiden Jahangiri and oh my God, Ethan Levy. So it happened to. Alrighty. So next question. Are your schools on a pass-fail basis? Or are they on a letter grade or is it like high honors, something like that?
Yeah, I forgot to mention about from the last question, MCAT studying. I studied for the MCAT in my senior year, and I took it April of my application cycle or something like that. It was like right before, so my score actually released like a week before I submitted my application, which was kind of a risk because it could have been bad, but ended up working out well. I spent about 4 months studying for it. So sorry, what was this question? It was pass fail. Yeah, that's right. First year and a half for us are pass fail. The pre-clinicals are pass fail, and then once you're in clinicals, you have honors, high pass, and fail. That's how it is. Honors is a small percentage of the class. High pass is most of the class. Pass is, I would say high pass and pass are like kind of half and half. Mostly high pass. And then fail, it's kind of hard to fail in rotations. To be honest, you have to like royally mess up. Oh, and then you would have to fail the subject exam at each rotation, like 3 times or something like that, or 4 times, which is like that means you just didn't study at all, or on the renditions. Yeah, but that's kind of how it is. In the preclinical side, yeah, it's just pass or fail, and that's determined based off of your how well you do on the exam at the end of the block, each block.
Yeah, at SLU it's pretty similar to USC. Pass fail for the first year and a half, you need 75% or higher to pass. Not to say that it's easy, like some is still like difficult. You have to study a lot, but it's definitely a stress off to know you're not competing or like trying to get a little like trying to be above like others to stand out in rank. You're just studying to learn medicine for the sake of medicine and pass. But after you get into your clinicals, clerkships, it's again like you get honors, near honors, or high pass, I think. I forgot exactly what it's called, and then pass and then fail. So it's like a tiered grading system. And again, like percentiles get each of those scores. I believe the percentiles are like, and it's coming from your clinical performance that's rated by faculty and your exam performance on NBME, like national standardized exams. I believe for our school, your rank or your grade for the national exam comes compared not to your classmates, but the national averages and scores and national percentiles for these scores. So like a top percentile gets honors, middle gets near honors, and then pass and then fail. But again, it's harder to fail. And then clerkship grade, like whatever your faculty grades you basically is what you get for your faculty performance and clerkships. And I think those grades come together too, but they like label them as different things for us on our transcripts. But that's kind of the graded versus not graded elements.
I would say over 90% of US medical schools are pass fail or honors. Pass fail the first 2 years in honors. Pass fail your clerkship years. I see a lot of med students come through clerkship year, and I could tell you that you have to try really hard to not pass. Um, because your resident evaluation, at least where I work at, is really important. So if you like show up and I don't know, smack the resident upside the head or something, then that'd be other issues. But
Yeah.
you have to try really hard. And then I think when you get honors is the written exam, and if you do well in that, then they'll combine that and give you honors. But yeah, those and I think and then your residency letter comes from a lot of your rotation, like you know, rotation evaluations from residents and faculty. So
Yeah, for to not pass the rotation is quite hard. Like they give you like three retries pretty much, um, or multiple retries. Like even on the exams, many schools do. Um, the to get honors is also hard. So honors for our school, the way they do it is they take the top percentile. I think it's like 10 percentile or something from previous years, and then they create a grade cutoff of overall grade. And if you surpass that overall grade cutoff, then you get honors in a sense. And it's a combination between your clinical evaluation, your score on the exam, and the way that they determine it is like this complex. I don't even know how, but it ends up being that like only a certain percentile of people end up getting honors, but it's not based off of our own class. So it's not like if like if somebody did better than me, they get honors and I didn't because they like there was just one extra person who did better than me. It's based off of previous years. They just create a cutoff, a grade cutoff, and if you surpass that grade cutoff, you get honors. But it always ends up working out that it ends up being something close to like a certain percentile. Maybe it's like 10 or 20. I don't remember. But yeah, that's how it is.
Now I gotta ask, based on that, do you think there's actually less pressure than just using like a letter grading scale if there's still
Yeah.
like
Oh yeah.
anything?
100%. And I think that comes with it creates an environment where people don't compete but collaborate. And I think that's all there's to be said about that.
Alrighty, so for the next question, what is something that surprised you about medical school overall? So you talked about the most challenging thing, what you most enjoyed about it, or so far. Now, what has most surprised you about it?
I think for me, it's how much fun you're gonna have. I know this might be a crazy statement. I know Bobak is like, what the F are you talking about, man? Like, sorry for lack of better words, but it'll get there. Trust me. Look, there's one thing that I want to be very clear about medical school. Your entire journey, there's gonna be a million people who come and tell you, don't do it. It's terrible. It's hard. It's too hard. Don't do it. You won't be able to do it. People fail. There's somebody who's curing cancer right now. How are you going to get into medical school? You'll hear all these like crazy things like, oh, this other guy, like starting from like when he was like 3 years old, he started working as a medical assistant or whatever. I don't know. Like you'll hear all sorts of crazy things and people will tell you all sorts of crazy things. You just need to, in the pre-med phase, learn how to tune everything out and focus on you and focus on giving your best shot. And if this is truly your dream, 100% go for it. There'll be a million people who tell you don't do it. I want to be the one who tells you, no, do it. If you want to do it, you should do it. I'm a very big advocate for medicine. I think that if this is a dream of yours, you have to go for it. Worst case scenario, it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. It's okay, but at least you went for it, you know? And you learn in the process if this is truly what you want to do or not. Um, One thing about medical school, there's a lot of misconceptions, in my opinion. People say that it's impossible, that the moment you start, that's it, your life's over. You got to be some sort of genius to succeed in medical school. I don't know. There's probably a million things you guys have heard about it at this point. I don't remember what people say anymore because it's been a while. Um, I'll tell you, all of that is crap, for lack of better words. Yes, is medical school hard? Hell yeah, it's hard. So, everything's hard. You want to be an engineer, it's hard. You want to be going to and open your own business, it's hard. Everything you do is hard. If you want to have any meaningful experience in your life, it's going to be hard. That's just the reality of life. Medical school is nothing different. Yeah, getting to medical school is hard. Being in medicine, studying in medical school, it's hard. So what? So what? You know, have any of you done anything that was simple in your life that you draw great meaning from? Or that you proudly look upon it and like, wow, like, this is something I'm so proud of. That one roller coaster I sat on, and it gave a cheap thrill for 5 minutes. No, you remember those difficult challenges that you overcame, and those things not only define your character, those things are the things that you fondly look upon on, and you kind of get nostalgic and you pride yourself over, and you draw the most meaning from in your life. And and those things are naturally hard, you know? Anything worth anything is hard. Medicine is no exception to this. That being said, just because it's hard doesn't mean that your life stops, that it's not fun, that everything gets put on hold, that it's impossible, that you have to be a genius. No, that's not true. The very beginning is pretty difficult. You adjust. You adjust, you have to learn how to adjust. It's a lot of things being thrown at you at once. They're basically opening a fire hose and blasting your face with it, and you have to kind of catch onto all the information while figuring out how to study. And if you're moving to a new location, figuring out how to just live on your own or, be somewhere you've never been before, far from family. So there's definitely some complex interplay of things that make the first few months pretty tough. But then you get into the hang of things, then you develop your system, then you start to adjust. And once that happens, it's just rinse and repeat. That's it. It just becomes a rinse and repeat, it becomes routine. Medical school is a full-time job. Sometimes it's a part-time job depending on the week. What's the difference if you spend 30 hours a week studying or if you spend 30 hours a week working as an administrator on a computer? Like you're going to be spending 30 hours a week doing something, or 40 hours or 50 hours. Yeah, in this case, it's going to be studying. So if you're somebody who has like a visceral reaction to studying, then yeah, maybe medical school is not the right option. Maybe it's like something else is necessary. But like end of the day, it's still like it's gonna be like a full-time job. It's no different. It's a mental load, it's a mental strength, but um, it's very doable. You don't have to be a genius. I am not a genius by any means, but I feel like I succeeded in medical school in the first 2 years in the preclinicals. Your life does not stop at all. I feel like genuinely my social life in medical school was far better than I ever had before medical school, by far. I would go in the beginning, not so much, but eventually, like after a few months, after like about a year, all the classmates, we would go out with them. We would go to like breweries after exams. We would go on with parties. We would celebrate. We would do Thanksgiving together. Every weekend there's something going on or somebody's hosting something at their house. Social life in medical school was awesome. I had more of a social life there than ever before. Genuinely. Genuinely. My point is, don't listen to all the crap people say. Focus on yourself. The only comparison you should be making is you today and versus you yesterday. That's the only comparison that matters. Make a plan of the things that you know you need to do, plan for when you need to do them, and just do them. Everything else will click the way it's supposed to. It's difficult, but it's supposed to be. Everything worth anything is difficult. That's my take on it.
Yeah, I don't think there's a better way I could have put it than the way Raphael said it. So I'm just going to say something funny instead as to what's surprising because what he said was just amazing. Like I'm inspired to actually go watch my lectures right now from what you just said. Like I'm probably going to. We got embryology 3 hours lined up right after this. But like that's truly inspiring. Like I completely agree with what Raphael said. What surprised me was when they first pulled out the bone saws in anatomy lab. They just lined them up. They're like, okay, Today we're gonna look at some ligaments. And I'm like, well, what do you mean we're gonna look at some ligaments? And I'll just say that. That was the first use of the bone saws. It gets worse, but I don't want to spoil it for anyone. I think Raphael knows what I'm talking about. So, so yeah,
It's quite a shock. I'll
it
tell
is
you
quite a
that.
shock. So that's my surprise so far. I am seeing the fun you're talking about, though. The fun of medical school. It's starting to show up a little bit. But yeah.
All right, you guys kind of touched on this a little bit, but how do you guys balance your personal life on the process to medical school? So relationships with friends and loved ones.
Sorry to clarify, that's the process to medical school or in medical school?
Yes. You can also talk about in medical school as well if you'd like.
Okay, so how do you balance it? That's a great question. Honestly, the balance is the most difficult thing ever. That the hardest part about medical school, the journey of medical school, all of that, it's not the content that you learn. It's not the tests that you take. It's not the MCAT. It's not step one, step two. It's the balance in your day-to-day life. Those little things, they're one instance events that you kind of prepare for long periods of time, but your lived daily life is that struggle of balancing. The reality is if you expect that that struggle is ever going to go away, it's never going to go away. You're always going to have a struggle balancing things. It's a fact of life. No matter what you do, there's always going to be a strain of things that require attention from multiple places at the same time. They all require equal priority, and you're going to be ripped in every little direction. It's the finding of the balance is I guess the pathway of maturing in a sense. As you mature, you start to learn how to prioritize things. You go top priority, what is it? And you literally list it down. You make that list clear and then you balance accordingly. And the more you do it, the better you get. And it gets better through and through and through and through, even when times get harder and harder and harder, because your priorities don't decrease as you grow. You know, your responsibilities don't vanish as you get older. They significantly increase. So how do you actually balance? I'd say prioritize and execute. That's it's a very simple rule that I have. Prioritize what are the most important things to you. Literally, one, two, three, four, five. What are they? Write them down. And there is a power to writing something down. When you write something down, you not only have to organize it in your mind to be able to write it, but you directly address it by just putting on a piece of paper. So yeah, write it down. Really write it down. What are your priorities right now? Priority number one, school. Great. Priority number two, family occasions, significant other. Priority number three, time for myself. Whatever it is. Priority number four. Right now, priority number
Health.
17 is sleep for me, I would say. But prioritize and execute. That's the way you balance things. And in the pre-med process, my priority, yeah, it came to be I had to tell my loved ones, I had to tell my friends, I had to tell my family that, hey guys, there's going to be a rough, 1 year right now, and I will have to put all hands on deck on my studies. And that didn't mean that I'm going to completely like, bye guys, I'm not going to see you for another year. No. It just meant that right now my priority had to be school, so sometimes I'm going to have to miss an event. Sometimes I'm not going to be able to make it to the hangout. Sometimes I'm going to have to spend my Saturdays and Sundays studying for 5 hours or 6 hours for whatever reasons, or I had my job that I had to go to where I was doing my clinical work. And I just had that honest conversation with them, and then you prioritize what it is that you want to do, and you execute accordingly. So that's the only way. There's no way to do everything and do it perfectly. It's just not realistic and it's impossible. You just have to simply say what are the most important things, communicate that to the people that you love and care about, so they're all on the same page with you. And in fact, you'll find that they support you, and it makes it easier to actually execute your priorities when you do that.
Yeah, touching on that, definitely like before I forget, like the writing things down and describing your priorities, that's exactly what I do. I got my notepad right here, right next to me. Like that's exactly what I do. I write down exactly my priorities, what I need to do like directly. And then I do the extra stuff at the bottom too that like I'd love to do, but like if it doesn't happen, it's okay. I understand. You can't just be going willy-nilly thinking like anything that immediately comes to your mind and try to do it. Otherwise, you're gonna fall behind and you're gonna get screwed. Going looking back in the process, like my third year especially was horrible. Just I was really like inside studying, didn't really hang out with people much, and it sucked. Contrast to after I applied, sending my applications my fourth year of school, you couldn't keep me inside. I was a monster, truly. I was just out all the time, literally. It's like total transformation. And I was like, man, I've really been missing out on life. Like I would like go out, like I'd have classes like 2 days a week. I just go like explore LA for a day, like solo. Because everyone else had jobs and lives and classes and stuff to do. I was just like I don't care anymore. I was just out wandering, exploring. But like now, after that, after an experience of actually living, I was like, okay, we got to find balance. And again, it's hard to find balance in med school sometimes, right? Because sometimes you have to study, right? You fall behind, something happens, you got sick. But I'd say it's definitely possible too. If you like manage your priorities, write down what you need to do, and kind of organize yourself on a schedule, right? Because all you're doing in med school, like I'd say you're doing fewer, not necessarily zero, but like much fewer extracurriculars. Your full-time job is med school, ideally. Like I know like everyone has different financial circumstances. I have like a lot of loans right now that like are supporting me, but like my full-time job is medical school basically right now. And of course, everyone has have circumstances, different things that they have to prioritize, but like I do medical school. I try to balance out like good eating habits, good exercise habits, good like social habits, and that's like what I try to line up basically. And it's possible, I would say.
100%.
Yeah.
And on that priority list, it never changes. Like I can show you guys right now. I have a whiteboard that's organized high priority, medium priority, low priority, and I edit it every day, and it's just right next to my where I sit. And that never changes. So this is on the broad scale of broad goals. Like by this time, I want to take the MCAT, or by this date, this is my proposed date that I want to do whatever the heck. I don't know. And then on the all the way down to like the day-to-day scale, which is today's priorities. What's high priority today that I absolutely need to get it done? What's medium priority that I will probably get to, but I might not knock out of it at all, not knock all of them out. And then low priority, which is like if I get to it, I get to it. It's not, and the world's not going to change if I don't get this done today, kind of thing. And then I adjust that. Sometimes low priority things become medium, and sometimes medium priority things become low, and vice versa, And it's a day-to-day thing. So the key to balancing, really, there's only one. If I had to isolate one word that describes it, it's discipline. That's it. Like discipline is freedom, guys. Like it was just counterintuitive because you would think the more disciplined you are, your schedule's more strained, and you're like disciplining yourself, and that's associated with like like the opposite freedom, but it's not true. When you're disciplined, and you discipline yourself to the point where it's like you really stay as adherent as possible to the schedule that you're making for yourself, and you have to be realistic about your schedule as well. That's a whole nother conversation. Don't be crazy. Don't put 50 things on your high priority because that just means you're not prioritizing correctly. That there's no way you have 50 high priority things. But when you're disciplined enough and the first thing you do, you come and you make your 15 minutes when you wake up, you say what you have to do today. 15 minutes before you go to sleep, you write what you have to do next day. And then the next day you wake up, 15 minutes, you take a look at that list and then you readjust accordingly. And then you just do it. The first thing in your day, you just start knocking those things out. You turn your brain off and you just go one, two, three, four, check, 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 check. You have that discipline and you kind of go in that little mode, that little like kind of like grind mode. And next thing you know, it's 2 p.m. and you're done with everything. And now you're free. But real imprisonment, real hell, quote unquote, is that when you don't write things down, it's like that jumble of things that you have to do that's just floating in the air somewhere in your mind. And it's just things that are just floating around. Oh, like this essay I have to write, oh, just like somewhere in your mind somewhere, and oh, like this other priority is somewhere in your mind somewhere. And then you spend all of your day kind of worrying about what you need to do. You never end up starting what you need to do because you're also anxious about starting, by the way. And then by the time you get around to doing it, it's 9 p.m. and you spent your entire day studying, but you didn't. You know what I mean? We all have done this. We all continue to do this. Shakespeare had a very interesting quote about this, and it's not an exact word for word quote from what I remember, but he had an interesting quote about this, and it was something along the lines of hell is lived in the process of conceiving a thought and the action of doing it. It's lived in that time. Okay? And That is, in my opinion, 100% true. I think I have put myself through absolute hell doing all sorts of mental gymnastics in preparation to a task versus whenever I actually sit down and go like, okay, and just start doing it. The task itself, it's like once you start doing it, you start doing it. You just kind of do it. And then you don't think about it. You just kind of go with it. It's not that bad. But the mental gymnastics you put yourself through to do a task, oh God, that's hell. That's true hell. So if you could just minimize that time and have like that discipline to offset it by just having that 15-minute before you sleep, 15-minute you wake up, prioritize and execute, not only will you able to balance everything better, not perfectly, but better. You'll have more time for yourself. You'll feel more free, and you won't be constantly in like that hell state in a sense. So, um, it's never a perfect process, but you got to do your best to try to get as close to that as possible. I think that's the key to really just kind of having a normal balance to your day.
Yeah, I know for me, I do that as well. I don't know how I did it before that. After doing it, I was like, oh my goodness. It's just everything is so nice and simple now in terms of figuring everything what I need to do.
Yeah, a little
All
bit
right.
of structure never hurt anyone.
Right. Since we're getting to the, end of the time, if there's any, last thoughts you guys would like to say, your experiences, or for everyone in the audience, please feel free.
All right. A couple things. Just I know there's like three quick questions. And I'll just quickly just like speedball answer them. One was first gen. How do you find ways to help pay for tuition, loans, and then some programs have like little scholarships and financial assistance. You'll learn all of that on the process. But loans, like don't be afraid of loans. It is what it is. We all are gonna go through it. I have like $300,000 of loans already or whatever at the tail towards the tail end of medical school. But it'll work out. There's a lot of programs and stuff that they'll teach you about how to get those paid off and forgiveness things and all sorts of stuff like that. What aspects of your app that set apart from other applicants? I don't know, and I don't care, to be honest. I just I did it, yeah, like I really don't know. Like I don't know what set me apart. I think what set me apart was just being me. Like my just me, just being me. I worked hard and I'm passionate about medicine, and I think my passion is the only thing that set me apart because everyone's great, everyone's awesome, everyone deserves it. I don't know what set me apart. I think my only unique thing is just that I'm really passionate about this and clinical experience or research, most how to find them. I think most departments have, or a lot of schools have like a big dashboard of all of their faculties participating in some sort of research. The way I did it at UCI, we had a School of Medicine faculty list that was participating in research, or even if they weren't. And I literally sent 100 emails to everybody in the School of Medicine doing something that I was remotely interested in and some sort of research at the UCI School of Medicine. So if your school has an adjunct School of Medicine, wonderful. That's awesome. If they don't, you can do it either at your school or even reach out to a local medical school, for some good clinical research. So I reached out, sent 100 emails, brief, nothing crazy. I didn't send like my entire life story because these people are busy and they're not going to read that. All I did was one sentence introduction. Hi, my name is Raphael. I am a second year second year undergrad student studying blah 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 at blah blah blah. I came across your research about blah 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 blah, and I'm passionate about that because of blah 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 blah. So that's two lines so far. I was looking for advice on what a student like me can do to get involved in research such as yours. That's it. Best. I know you're super busy. You probably get tons of emails, and I literally would write it word for word. I know you're super busy. You probably get tons of emails from students. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. I greatly respect your time and consideration. And that's it. Not even asking for a position, not asking for anything, just what piece of advice do you have for a student like me? And lo and behold, this was during COVID when nobody was even doing research. So there was like almost no opportunities. But I got so many replies back of here's this piece of advice, here's that piece of advice. Some people were like, hey, actually, we are looking for a place, or like a new student. Here, come interview with us. Or, hey, I actually know a guy who's doing this work, and maybe you should reach out to them. That's it. It was a 4-line email, like that's it. And I sent like 100 of those. Just that's it. Just sit down, prioritize, and execute that. Put that on your medium priority list for something to do in your near future. As far as last comments from my end, and I know I'm rambling, and if you let me, I'll talk for the next 10 years probably without stopping. But Medical school is very doable. It's very achievable. Getting there is the hardest part of the journey. Once you're there, things get a lot better because it's more structured and you know what you need to do. I say if you have this dream, don't let go of it. Go one, you just have to go all in. That's it. Go all in. The worst thing you can do is nothing. The worst thing you could do is out of fear, just kind of delay all the things that you need to do to go towards this goal. I say that if you're unsure still, go volunteer. Go volunteer in a hospital. Go do something. Just do something. Because hey, if you volunteer and you're like, this sucks, no thanks, then hey, no worries. Good. Hey, you got that experience. It was not a waste of time because you learned something valuable for it. And now you know for sure that this pathway is not really for me, but then it'll bring you closer to what your true goal is. Or on the flip side, if you volunteer and you're like, wow, I love this. There you go. You're on the beginning of the journey. Don't stop. At that point, you just keep going. Okay. You make your big goals. You list out what the big goals are. MCAT, clinical experience, research experience, volunteering. You list those big goals. You look at your calendar and you kind of start setting yourself like this is how I plan on going towards those. And you create a plan. The hardest part of this, the most anxiety provoking part of this whole journey is not having a plan. But when you sit down and you make a plan, it alleviates so much anxiety because at that point now you have structure, now you have a direction, and that plan will change as you learn more naturally. It will constantly change, you'll constantly evolve. Good, but you have to start. The worst thing you can do is not start out of like that ambiguity of like, do I want? Do I? Just who cares if you do? Try it. Maybe you love it. Maybe you don't. There's no such thing as a bad experience, in my opinion. Everything comes with knowledge, everything comes with wisdom. So the worst thing you can get is a little bit of wisdom and some story you can tell your kids one day, like, I wanted to be wanted to do medicine one day, but I tried this and I hated it for this reason, but it brought me towards blah blah blah. Or the flip side, I didn't know if I wanted to do medicine. One day I was volunteering and boom, this is everything I was ever wanted, and now you began. So don't do nothing, do something. Go for it. Don't listen to other people. Nobody knows what they're talking about. All advice is bad, even mine, maybe. Um, if you believe this is what you want to do, then go for it. Like, tune out everybody. Nobody knows what they're talking about, especially people who aren't working actively in the field, because a lot of people, like to project their own desires or wishes of what they want to do in medicine, and they kind of try to deter people from going there because they didn't do it, which is nothing wrong with not doing it. There's nothing wrong at all with not doing it, but just be aware of who's giving you advice and why. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I don't know if I could add on top of that, to be honest. I think Raphael covered it all pretty great. Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming, everybody, and thank you to our speakers, especially. Thank you for both the philosophy and also just the advice for both medical school and life. I can tell you definitely that I will internalize a lot of what has been said. So thank you.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Have a great weekend.